Need a winter holiday escape? Forget your cares in Fiji. White sand beaches and scuba diving are calling. Your tropical paradise getaway is just one nonstop Fiji Airways flight away. With round-trip fares starting at $899 from LAX or SFO. Or check out great fares to Australia and New Zealand with seamless connections via Fiji. Book now at FijiAirways.com. From here to happiness, flying direct with Fiji Airways.
Here's to holiday traditions, the ones that started as a quick laugh but are now irreplaceable. Here's to the recipes that require Grandma's mixing bowl because they just won't taste the same without it. The Chinette brand believes in spending more time on traditions and less time cleaning up. With the Chinette Crystal, Comfort, and Classic collections, we can help make your holiday celebrations better for years to come. Here's to mixing timeless traditions with a few new ones. Here's to us, all of us. To find out more, visit mychinette.com.
Welcome, friends, it's the MovieFilm Podcast. MovieFilm Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio. Welcome to MovieFilm. It is episode 270. I am Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Are we both stateside?
Yes. Yeah. It's
in the same time zone?
Indeed we are. Indeed we are. I am back in California. So yeah, wow. You know, it's weird because we have chatted since we last recorded, but it's weird that my last sort of record with you was in that alley in Rome.
That's right.
That feels like so long ago. Yeah. Wow.
I'm just glad that it wasn't like, and that was the last time I spoke with them. So, folks, if you know anything about the whereabouts of Brian Hall, like,
yeah, man, me too. I would fully expect you though to go like all Liam Neeson and come get me.
oh, no doubt, no doubt. Oh yeah, I would tear apart all kinds of dens of thievery and villainy.
I appreciate that, Jackie.
In my mind, I got to be honest.
Exactly.
I don't. My kids have like a pull-up bar, and they were like, "So, Pop, can you do a pull-up?" I was like, "I'm not going to try anymore because I'm a big fatty now." So, I know, I know my limitations.
Hey, you know what? And I respect that you know that. That's what I'll say.
I was like, "What's worse, me being like, nope?" Or me trying and failing miserably.
Yeah, and ending up in the chair tied up next to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd be like, this is another one of our wacky adventures.
I know.
Here we go again.
Yeah, but no, it's nice to be back. It was a nice trip. I was with Federica's family, and so that's always like a nice time. A, to be away, but B, to spend time with them and get to know her side of the family even better. So it was a really lovely time over in Italy.
And you were on the open water for a little while there.
Yeah, we did Italy. We did land first, and saw Rome and Sicily, and then we were on a boat for several days. Yeah, and where we'd go out on the water and anchor and get to swim a little, and in the evening maybe we'd go into the nearest town and have dinner, and it was amazing in other worlds.
Would you say you're a boat person, or is this like a new experience for you?
This is definitely a new experience for me, but I've always enjoyed boats. I mean, when
like years, as a concept, you appreciate this.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
they helped human evolution. They helped commerce and things like that. I'm glad they exist.
I think they're great. I think they've been great for the world. But I think no, I mean this whole sort of like staying on a boat thing is sort of new to me. But I've always enjoyed. I remember going deep sea fishing with my dad on a boat in Oregon when I was younger, and then some guys, friends of mine, we'd go on a trip every year. And when we'd go to a city and we didn't know what to do, we'd be like, well, let's rent a boat for the afternoon. So we'd get, like a motorboat and just zip around a lake or something. So, yeah, I mean, what about you? Are you yay or nay on boats?
Well, I tend to be fearful of everything. That's sort of what I've learned about myself.
I don't think that's a horrible start. starting point, right? Like it's like caution, and then
it's gotten me this
feel
far.
it out, and then see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, well, not a couple, but I was thinking, oh wait, no, I've been around longer. About 15 years ago, I went to Lake Tahoe with some friends, and we woke up early, and we rented a speedboat, and we went out on the lake, and right in the middle of nowhere, the boat died.
Oh,
this is a true story. And when we tried to restart it, the key broke off in the ignition.
Oh no.
That's a true story. So at that point, I mean, we were far enough out that I could not see land.
Oh, really? Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm looking at my friends. I'm like, okay, which one of y'all am I going to eat first?
Your one friend's like, why is everybody looking at me like this?
Yeah. He's like a drumstick with eyes, you know? And so we had to radio for help, and that was the whole thing. And I'm like, well, that was literally the first time.
Okay. So I mean, that makes complete sense.
So I'm like, do we treat this like a lightning strike? Like, what are the odds that it happens again? Or do we say that maybe the universe is trying to tell you something?
You know, I thinking of movies like The Perfect Storm and things like that, or like Wolf of Wall Street. Like, I can't imagine being in some sort of boat way out in the ocean in choppy water. Like, I would definitely be fearful in that type of situation. But this, I mean, we are out there to some degree, but I mean, really, land is not terribly far away. It's mostly about, you know, going around an island or parking near different parts of an island and seeing lagoons and this and that. So you know what I mean? Like, I guess I never felt untethered in a way.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise I could see myself feeling a little more like if I couldn't see land at all. That sounds, your situation would definitely change a man.
Yeah. I was like Robert Redford in what is that?
Right.
All Is Lost.
All Is Lost. Oh, that was great.
That was me. That was a great movie.
Yeah.
But more importantly, Brian, more important than all your globetrotting adventures is your viewing of globetrotting adventures.
That is true. And if I am in the mood to watch globetrotting adventures, who better to watch trot said globe than the man himself, Indiana Jones?
How about that?
But here's the thing, though, Zachy. That movie doesn't come out till June 30th, right? So we couldn't have possibly seen it unless one of us is a film critic with access to early screenings.
I was about to say it's as if I came into possession of a dial of some sort.
Yes,
that moved things forward for us. Yeah, how about that?
The destiny of both of us. Yeah, that was a really long walk to say that Zachy got invited to a critic screening.
But you got there though. It's the point is the friends we made along the way. That's the point of that journey.
No, but you got invited to a critic screening of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny early. And you texted me the invite and said, yo, you think you can make this? And I was like, I don't know how, but I will. And so
I hit send, and I looked up, and you were in front of me being like, hey, when's the screen?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, I literally, what happened was it was early one Thursday morning. And so I got in my car. I did a full day of work, walked right to my car, drove till midnight to meet you up in the Bay Area. We went to the screening, and then I essentially drove straight back. So it was completely whirlwind, but it was absolutely worth it. And I mean, for those who don't know, we allude to it often, but it's funny. This was before we did our show. Seeing Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was kind of a formative experience for us. Or I don't know if formative is the right word, but it was definitely one we will never forget. And
and if I can add to that, it was sort of what planted the seeds of what became this show.
Yeah, it really did, didn't it? Even though it was a couple years before, but it really did.
4 years before, yeah. And I mean, we have been talking about a hypothetical fifth Indiana Jones movie since the earliest days of this show.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that because my oldest son, he has been listening to older episodes. He's like, man, I remember, like in episode 3, you were talking about whether there would be a fifth Indiana Jones. And
wow.
I was telling him, it's so weird that now and forever, Indiana Jones 5 exists in our past tense.
Yep. I think you said that when we walked out, like, and done. Like that happened.
Yeah. That's it,
Yeah. But just to give like all the context, I mean, back in 2008, Indiana Jones Crystal Skull was coming out, and you came down to Los Angeles to see it with me and our friend Sean. And that was such a weird experience. We had kind of a bad time with that movie, but it was so memorable. Well, also because we went to a theater, and the one that we had the tickets reserved for, and the power was out, so we had to scramble to another theater to go see it. And then when it was over, we all were like, did we just share the same collective dream? Like that did not feel like reality, And we've just been talking about it ever since. So when Indiana Jones 5 became official, it was like, well, there's no question. We've got to see this together.
Yeah.
So that was why there was no question in my mind. Like if I had to drive through the night, which I did, it's going to make it happen.
And I guess we shouldn't even bury the lead. It ended, and we turned to each other, and I think almost as one, we were like, that was pretty good.
Yeah. I think we both said, I feel positive about this.
Yeah, that's right.
We were both a little cautious, processing, but yeah, we had positive feelings about it. And it's funny, people have been asking me now how I feel about it. And I feel like I need to couch it in a lot of things, right? Before I say I liked it, because I do get the sense a lot of people, I think this is going to be a 50-50 movie. I don't know.
I would agree with that. No, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you and I both agreed. I mean, we weren't even expecting it to hold a candle to the original trilogy, right. So like, that's not a bar we're going to hold it up against. We're in 2023. CGI is a thing. It's not going to look like what, the ones that are just completely imprinted on us. So we were trying to be fair and measure it against a reasonable bar, right? And I think in doing that, at least for you and I, we came out having a positive experience with it. So I don't mean, please.
What I've said repeatedly, because I've gotten texts from people, what I've said is, don't expect it to touch those original three. Completely separate from a qualitative bar. I just think those three movies for many people exist in they are frozen in amber.
Yep.
And I think maybe when it came to Crystal Skull, that is sort of the crushing reality we ran face first into, which was, I want to feel after watching this the way I have felt all my life about those other ones. Right?
Yes.
And this just isn't that. However, if we say this is our last adventure with this character who we love, is it a worthwhile journey? Does it end at a point where I feel, sanguine about closing the book? Yeah, in my opinion, yes.
Totally agree. I said, and obviously we'll do a full episode about this and go into details.
By which time we will probably have seen it again, each of us.
Yeah, I think, speaking for myself, when there's a movie that I'm anticipating this much, like the first viewing is never going to be like my mind is racing the entire time as I'm watching it, thinking like, do I like this? I think I like this. Like, would Spielberg have done that? I don't know. It's just, I'm talking to myself whether I like it or not when I'm watching a movie, like I say, this anticipated. So I look forward now, especially that I'm like, that's what it is. And then watching it again, I look forward to having a clearer head. But I when I was trying to distill it for people, I said, look, I never expected to touch the original three. I just wanted to spend more time with my friend, Indiana Jones, and see a movie that felt a little more competent than most modern adventure films these days. It just, I just feel like I do still hold Indy to at least that standard. I want it to at least be better than what I feel like I'm seeing from other movies. And I feel I got that.
I think so.
I don't know that it's one you're going to be thinking about a lot, like I don't know that it's, and that could just have to do with age and, experience with the original three, but it was still a fun outing for me and a good time with Indy. So
If that sounds appealing. And folks who listen to this show, certainly people who listen for a long time, know the place of this franchise in our lives.
Yeah.
So take whatever we have to say with that in mind. And one thing I'll add, I do think it's probably longer than it needed to be. I think you could have made it a little leaner, and I think it might have been stronger. Sort of that's one of the selling points now with big blockbusters is, we got to be 2.5 hours. I'm going to say this probably could have been 2:10, and I think it wouldn't have hurt it. It might have helped it.
100% agree. I think it did have that thing, like you say, with like modern blockbusters where it felt a little busy. Yeah. And I think what's kind of nice when you look at the original trilogy is they aren't really busy. I mean, they're pretty
lean. Yeah.
They're pretty lean, and they're on to the next thing. And each set piece is also very focused. It's like, got to get the thing from the thing. And it's like all the complications that arise from getting from A to B. Yeah. And I think this movie gets a little busy sometimes in its set pieces and even in its plotting. But I don't know. That's 2023 for you, I guess.
It tangentially connected to this, and I think this relates to what we're going to be talking about later. But I took a glance at some of the box office projections, and there's sort of a lot of catastrophizing going on about, is this going to tank or what have you? And I can't say I have a huge amount of interest in that because I'm like, well, whatever, it's the last one anyway. It belongs to the ages now, regardless of how it does. Mm-hmm. But I will say that, and I tweeted this earlier, having spoken with some of my students, just conversationally about this movie and whether they're excited, I was like, I understand now what I felt when I was a freshman in high school about 29 years ago, and I saw ads for Death Wish 5.
Yeah.
And I'm like, the hell is this? Like, I knew Death Wish, right?
Yeah.
Fifth one? Another one? I was like, I get it now. It's 30 years later now. I get it.
Yeah, he's like 72 or something.
He was exactly 72.
Was he really?
He was exactly 72. I looked it up.
Holy cow. All right.
That's impressive.
That's weird. Wait, so what are the feelings of your early 20-something-year-old students?
I mean,
about this?
Again, it's
any
like
relationship to this?
Yeah, I mean, they're not like, what is that? They're like, no, I mean, we know it, but like
but on a Death Wish level, like not necessarily like their parents showed it to them, so they have some sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like any kids that are excited, it's because of that. Oh, it's been a multi-generational thing. But I wouldn't even say I'm surprised, but I'm aware of the fact that Indiana Jones is not exactly like Star Wars in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I see that. I see that with these kids where they're not like, I don't know what that is. They're like, no, yeah, that's for old people. It's not for us.
It's so interesting because I remember when 4 came out, even then I was like, damn, this is doing like really well. Like, I don't know if it got to 1 billion, but it came close. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, how about that? But that was 15 years ago.
Yeah. And you know what I'm realizing? And again, this will tie in with what we're going to talk about later. I think about 20 years and less is the window for that nostalgia to kick in, because over a certain point it becomes a thing for old people.
Sure.
Yeah. Like this film, if I can, Indiana Jones: The Dial of Destiny, what it reminded me a lot of was Rocky Balboa.
Trying to find your happiness this winter? Let Fiji Airways fly you there direct. Whether you're sunbathing or snorkeling, dining or dreaming, you'll experience legendary Fijian hospitality. Expect the warmest of welcomes in a specific paradise. Unplug, unwind, and relax in your happy place, Fiji. Get great deals on direct flights to happiness at FijiAirways.com. That's FijiAirways.com. You deserve this. Go from here to happiness, flying direct with Fiji Airways.
New on Curiosity Stream, we've walked with dinosaurs. We've explored our prehistoric planet, and we were always told the same story. Extinction came from the sky. But what if dinosaurs survived? Amazing Dino World 2. Watch it now on Curiosity Stream. With monthly, annual, and bundle plans, find the one that works for you at curiositystream.com.
Okay. Yep.
There's a little bit of an elegiac tone to it. Our hero is over the hill. It is one last adventure. It's not going to be his greatest heights, but it's a chance to spend one more chance with this character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for both films, it's like, well, I never expected to get this opportunity, so I'm just going to enjoy it at that level. But here's my point: Rocky Balboa ended, and by the way, that was 16 years after Rocky V, so it falls within that range, right?
Mm-hmm.
It ended and it did well, but you couldn't keep going with Rocky solo movies.
Right.
The only, Creed sort of happened as a fluke.
Right.
But Creed is specifically it's not about Rocky anymore. It's about this guy. And I think, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And because I think that the nostalgia only gets you so far, And
it's not like, I mean, he has kind of a partner in it, right? Phoebe Waller-Bridge, but
That's right.
They didn't try to be like, and this hot young actor who's going to draw in the younger audience, where it's really kind of like a dual sort of lead situation. It's not that. And so,
That's right.
yeah, I can see that. It's hard for me to wrap my head around because Harrison Ford is Harrison Ford to me. He's been there my whole life. And so no matter how old he looks, that's freaking Harrison Ford. But
right.
for someone who's like 10 or 9 when I first saw Last Crusade, that's like a really old guy. You know what I mean? And they have no relationship with him. So,
it's, Harrison Ford is now playing the president or some such in the MCU, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, he's at the Chuck Heston in True Lies stage.
Yes. Wow. Yes. That's a good comparison. Yeah.
So those are our initial thoughts to Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. We'll have more to say.
Definitely. Very, very initial. I am very much looking forward to seeing it again with a more relaxed mind and just taking it in and hopefully reaffirming how I felt about it. I will say I went to the movies this past weekend to go see Flash again with my brother. And when the trailer played for Indy 5, I was like, it stirred me again. I was like, I'm ready to watch that. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Flash again. We should say, Brian, that your trip up here was multifaceted.
Yes, it was. Well, so we were going to go see Indy at 10 in the morning. And then you were like, oh, and just in case, I got us tickets to the Flash because it was opening that day. And it was like, why not? So it
was our revisitation of summer of '89 in one day.
Crazy, isn't it? I mean, obviously with Michael Keaton Batman and Harrison Ford Indiana Jones, we get 1989 again. But thinking about it further, there's a Little Mermaid movie this year. And there's a Little Mermaid movie in 1989.
How funny. Wow.
We truly are in a circle. So
well, and to that point, I feel like we may very well be entering our last ride as far as pop culture catering exclusively to us.
Yeah, you're right, aren't we? We're kind of nearing the. We should be enjoying every last bit of this.
That's where I am. I'm like, you know what? It ain't going to be about me much longer. So we're about to enter full on, Disney afternoon, post whatever 91. The stuff that is not part of our experience, but kids after us really loved, like all the stuff being appealed to there and.
Well, we're starting to see it, right? I mean, with Power Rangers, which unfortunately didn't stick, despite us kind of liking it, that the movie that came out a couple of years ago. But then, I think it's gonna.
It came out too early. You see
that? You know what? You might be right.
Right?
Yeah.
I bet you if that movie were released today, it would have done gangbusters.
Right.
It was about 5 years too early. But we're about to get the VR Troopers revival and. what were some of those other ones? Masked Rider, all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't even know this stuff.
So once Power Rangers became a hit, they just started wholesale importing these Japanese series and adding snarky American teenage voiceover.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, yeah. Well, I was gonna say even like Pokemon, but I mean Pokemon never went away is the thing. And then Ninja Turtles too, which is kind of interesting because we're getting a Ninja Turtles movie this year, and that never really went away. It just kept reinventing itself in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like Ninja Turtles and Transformers, at least stuff from our era, that has just continued to mutate and transform, if you will, Brian.
Yes. Yeah.
You like that?
I do. Very much.
Did you watch the new Transformers? I know you had mentioned that.
No, I have not. And I was going to say that was kind of a thing about being away like I was, because my reception wasn't very good. And so I wasn't keeping up with a lot of things. I mean, I was texting when I could and whatnot, but it was interesting coming back and completely missing Into the Spider-Verse or what's this
Across the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse. And I missed it coming out, and I'm just seeing the aftermath of everybody just absolutely loving it. Amazing box office. And I feel like I sort of blanked out for a minute and then woke up and was like, oh, wow, this like amazing thing came out and everybody loves it, you know?
Yeah.
So Transformers I have not seen, and I have not seen Spider-Man yet either.
So I'm looking forward to discussing both of those. I don't know if you're if you're planning to watch. I know you're gonna watch Spider-Verse. I don't know if you're planning to watch Transformers. I hope you do, because
just so we can talk about it.
So we can talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, both of those are out. And is there anything else that you've caught up on lately?
Yeah, well, not a ton, but I did watch on the plane. I watched the Netflix documentary called Arnold, which is about Arnold Schwarzenegger.
About the character from Different Strokes. Oh,
yes. Oh. And I found out indeed what he was talking about. But yeah, no, this was a 3-part documentary on Netflix about the life of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it's broken up in an interesting way. It's basically 3 episodes, 3 chapters. So the first one is the bodybuilder, and then 2 is the actor, and 3 is the politician. And I gotta say, it was really interesting. I didn't find it as, I mean, maybe this is unfair, but you know, sometimes you watch these documentaries and you're like chomping at the bit. You get like a little addicted and you're like, give me the next one, give me the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't feeling that for this one, and I'm not sure I can put my finger on it.
Did it feel kind of surface level, maybe?
Yeah, I think that might be kind of it. Like, we say this maybe too often, or at least I do, but it almost felt sort of like a Wikipedia entry where it is interesting, but it didn't dig as much as I maybe might have enjoyed. But the thing that it does benefit from is Arnold Schwarzenegger is essentially its narrator.
Right.
So he's very involved. He's telling his story. And there's a ton of footage. I mean, you know, from the bodybuilding days, which is interesting, and him narrating what he was doing on stage and the way that he would like psychologically trick, people he was competing against. So he would earn favor with the judges. And so that stuff was all very interesting. And, hearing him talk just a little bit about the failure of Last Action Hero is kind of interesting. And, but it also,
I should say, at least for me, that was my first time being like, oh, he can like make a bad movie, like.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's another one of those things, that it lives with us, but I don't know that like your kids would understand, but like
right.
He was like the biggest star in the world, and I do remember that moment, Last Action Hero, but not specifically that, after that, where it was sort of like, True Lies was enormous, and I loved that movie. And then I remember Eraser coming out, and I didn't see it. I still actually haven't seen it. And I remember thinking, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, then it was like End of Days, and I did catch it, and I was like, that was all right. But like before that, it was like, excuse me, like Twins you saw, like Terminator 2 you saw. Like, you know what I mean? Like you didn't miss a Schwarzenegger movie. And he gets into that, and he talks about how that sort of led to, he always had this interest in politics, and it was sort of like, well, maybe I have something I can give back to the country that's given me so much. And that actually was maybe the most interesting one for me, because I remember it, and I think I lived in California in that moment, but I don't, I remember it almost sadly, it's embarrassing to admit, but just through like talk shows or like late night, making jokes about things that he was doing and whatnot. Like I wasn't really following it. I think I was in college at the time, maybe.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of cool to hear from his perspective why he did it and what he wanted to accomplish and how certain things didn't work for him. So he learned from those incidents and learned who and how to work with people, and actually pulled a few things off. And so
I'm curious if it gets into, because my memory is that initially he was sort of disastrous as a governor, because he was sort of trying to just strong arm his way, like,
Yes.
oh no, I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger, listen to me,
Yes.
and oh no, but nobody cared. And when he started sort of moderating and again, that's viewed as a negative, but it's like, well, you got to get people in a room, you got to make deals, and you got to, not everybody gets everything, but that's how you get stuff done.
Yeah.
And I remember that being sort of the latter part of his governorship.
Yeah, and like every politician sort of talks about reaching across the aisle just as like a buzzy sort of phrase, but he literally did. And it made some people upset. It turned other people on, and he really figured out, like, how can I truly, like, yes, I'm like this party, like I'm the Republican Party, but if we want to get anything done, like we all have to work together. And it was like maybe a little bit of a simpler time then, but he figured out a way to sort of engage people who thought very differently than him, and how that could get more things accomplished for the benefit of everybody. And so, I mean, look, that's what it paints, and that could be a little
heavily filtered through his perspective.
Exactly.
Right.
But it was still interesting to sort of, hear from his perspective, him talking about what that experience was like. So
I can't. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I don't know if I've said this before, but I graduated from San Jose State as a grad student when Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor, and so my diploma has, there's a space for the governor's signature, so it's Arnold Schwarzenegger's signature on my diploma, and I'm always like, that's just a neat memento of a specific era,
I remember, it's still kind of weird in my mind. Like, wow, Schwarzenegger was the governor of California.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for people who have any interest in Arnold, I think there's going to be something that appeals to them, or of interest watching this documentary. So that's on, it's called Arnold, and it's on Netflix.
There we go.
And then one more thing I watched, and I only watched it because of you, was you had mentioned you watched a 30 for 30 episode, which is the ESPN documentary series about the American Gladiators.
That's right.
And so this weekend, I was still a little jet lagged and kind of busy with things, but at the end of the day, I kind of wanted to watch something that made me feel warm and fuzzy. And so I was like, well, shoot. I loved American Gladiators back in the day. I was perfect audience for that. I think I was 12 or something when that came out, and I don't really know the story of it. And so I checked it out, and I have to say it was very interesting. Just the whole idea of, that show just existed on Saturday evenings to me, and it's just a bunch of people. Channel 50 knocking each other around, doing the joust and the gauntlet at the end. But it was just fascinating to even think of it as a TV show and like a production and a concept, and where'd that concept come from. And there's some questions about who really came up with what, and trying to rewrite history a little bit. And I found it pretty fascinating. So you mentioned you watched it, but did you enjoy it?
I'm about halfway through it. I've enjoyed what I've seen so far. And it's very funny because just on a lark, a few weeks before this thing came out, I searched on YouTube for American Gladiators. It just popped into my brain, and I found that there's a American Gladiators channel on YouTube, and they have full episodes, like the entire series they have. And I was like, well, I'll be damned, So I've been completely separate from this documentary. I had been watching old episodes. My kids are watching them. And it's enjoyable to revisit,
It was super fun. I was a kid, like I was the prime audience for this, but it is funny, as happens with every generation, the response to the show was basically like the death of television, like
right. Which like, what?
yeah. It's, I don't know. It's just fun. Even looking at it now, I'm like, well, yeah, on its face, it's a little silly with the names, people like Laser and, Gemini and stuff.
They're kind of scantily clad slightly.
Sure. But it's like, even watching it, actually, they showed a clip where it was, unfortunately, I think it was like someone getting injured, or maybe they were talking about what they were feeling during this certain moment. And as they were showing the clip, no joke, I started yelling at the screen, like, go, duck. Like there's just something primal about just rooting for someone to achieve something. So
Brian, I defy you not to get pulled in by those old episodes on YouTube.
Yeah. And it really is. And they say it in the documentary. I mean, it's David versus Goliath. Like, you have these action figure gladiators, and then you have these real world people who are, they're fit, but like, can they conquer the gladiator? Like, there's some, can they best them? Like, there's just something super entertaining. And it's like we always talk about, or at least I do, I guess, with boxing movies. I find boxing movies irresistible, and they're the same movie. They're all the same movie, but you just can't help but want to see this person win. Like, it's just in our bones. And like, I think they funneled that into a television show, and they put like a funny, sort of colorful spin on it. And the games are really crazy, where they're in those rolling balls, But yeah, so it was interesting to just sort of see the behind the scenes of all of it, and who was putting it together, and how the gladiators themselves felt about it, So
the fact that in the initial stages, when they pitched it to Fox, and Fox was like, "We'll take it, but it's got to be scripted from stem to stern."
Mm-hmm.
Everything has to, like, so in other words, they wanted it to be like WWE.
Sure.
And you say, well, that would have been, a colossal miscalculation, because if you want that, you can just watch, pro wrestling.
Yep.
I think what made it successful for those 7 years was exactly that. Like, no, it's about the competition,
Mm-hmm.
The gladiators are not the main characters, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I definitely recommend, if that sounds appealing to you. Like, if you watch American Gladiators, I think it's going to be an interesting
And this is kind of a Gladiators moment, because Netflix has a Gladiators documentary dropping, I believe, later this month.
Wow, it really, these days, it feels like it rains, it pours, right? Like, there's one subject, or like OJ or something, like a couple years ago, all of a sudden there's like 5 documentaries and TV shows about it, right?
Yep.
Well, I mean, I'm going to watch it.
June 28th, it drops.
Oh, great. So soon. All right, perfect.
Gemini, Zap, Nitro, Ice, Blaze, and Laser return for this trip down pop culture memory lane.
Now, see, that's interesting, because not all of them returned for the 30 for 30.
That's right.
Yeah. So, curious.
But as I said earlier, Brian, hey, this is the last remnants of our moment. So I think we can lump American Gladiators in there too, because
yes, 100%.
30 years from now, people will be like, "Did you see the documentary about American Ninja Master? It's crazy."
You're right, exactly. Yeah, you're totally right.
But with that, let's take a short break, Brian.
Let's do it.
Trying to find your happiness this winter? Let Fiji Airways fly you there direct. Whether you're sunbathing or snorkeling, dining or dreaming, you'll experience legendary Fijian hospitality. Expect the warmest of welcomes in a specific paradise. Unplug, unwind, and relax in your happy place, Fiji. Get great deals on direct flights to happiness at FijiAirways.com. That's FijiAirways.com. You deserve this. Go from here to happiness, flying direct with Fiji Airways.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And we are back. Brian, are you back?
I'm back.
Well, we got a letter here from Alvi Satar, who responded to our commentary a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the the WGA strike, which is still, as we record this, still ongoing.
Yep.
It's kind of crazy how I think it's lasted longer than a lot of people in the bigwig, regions expected.
Yeah, and shutting down shows that I think they thought they could maybe get by, under the radar, like, oh, just keep rolling. And then more and more shows are getting shut down.
Yeah, well, I love that ABC announced their fall schedule, and they're like, this is our strike-proof schedule. Don't mind our fumes. And it's like Celebrity Bachelor, Bachelor in Paris.
Right.
More Bachelor. It's like 80% Bachelor on ABC.
Yeah. Sounds about right.
And then the rest is Bachelorette. Yeah. So not doing so well there.
You know what's funny, actually? That was part. Did you get to that part in the American Gladiators documentary where they realized, they're like, how did this get on the air? And it happened during a writer's strike. And then it came back in the early 2000s and returned to the air during the other writer's strike.
That's right. Yeah. The one, Hulk Hogan was the host.
Yeah.
Color commentator, whatever.
Yeah.
That didn't last though, did it?
No, but it's funny because they have that sort of wolf guy. Do you remember, like, he had sort of like Wolverine chops and he would like howl at the moon? And I was like, I don't know why, but I do remember that guy.
How weird.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, time is a flat circle.
That's
the lesson there. But Ulvi wrote a letter in response to our comments about, AI and sort of the people sort of leaning into that to create, content, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I really enjoyed hearing what you guys had to say about AI and its implications on media and politics and beyond, and wanted to offer my own perspective. I think the threat of AI isn't whether or not it can write a passable script, but the change in the way people view movies, TV, and art in general. An interesting premise, a well-developed character, thoughtful dialogue, or an intriguing plot are valuable because they came from the minds of humans and therefore necessarily say something about humans. We all know we could build a robot with greater accuracy than the best basketball player, but no one's interested in seeing a robot meticulously and consistently throw balls into a net. I guess my point is that the point of art, at least partly, is that you can watch a movie express an emotion or an idea or a scenario and feel a sense of relief that another human being has felt what you felt, or expressed an idea that resonates with you, or cares about an issue that matters to you. I think that's fundamentally missing with AI-generated scripts, and this kind of art can only be worthwhile if you view movies as products rather than dialogue between the people behind them and the audience.
I agree. It's interesting though. I think he's absolutely correct. And that's my feeling. I feel like you can teach a computer how to write a competent script, but there's something about a human's experience or making a character do something that doesn't make sense, because humans do that sometimes, that make movies and characters and whatnot interesting, that will always make a human written script feel more, desirable or human, frankly, to an audience than a script written by AI or something. And at the same time, I can't remember if I got into this when we were talking, but I watched a movie. I'm going to completely rip it apart. So I'm not going to say what it was because it's really mean. But I watched a movie that was a streaming movie the other day. Or no, like it was like a month or so ago. And it was, Federica was like, this movie is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And so she's like, it feels like it was written by AI. So I ended up watching it, and I'm not kidding. Like, the writing, the way that the characters interacted with one another, the directing, like, didn't even like serve what was happening in the scene. It more than anything I've ever seen, it absolutely felt like it was a movie made by AI. And like, characters, there's supposed to be this sort of chemistry between these two characters, and they're saying the lines, or at least other characters around them are saying lines to reflect like, damn, you guys, get a room, kind of a thing. But it's like they forgot to actually have chemistry. These two characters, like, they just don't. And so like those lines almost felt like Naked Gun style parody because they have no chemistry at all. And,
right.
And then I go on. So I'm like, yeah, that movie's terrible, and I expect everyone to sort of hate it. And then I was seeing people being like, yeah, it's fine. And I was like, well, I mean, if movies start to feel this way and they don't have that sort of texture and care put into them, and people are just okay watching that while they're folding laundry, then you might start conditioning audiences to just not need more than that, like hopefully not everybody, but I mean, I almost feel like I'm seeing it a little bit. And so I don't know. I still
with what's that movie of Dwayne Johnson and Gal Gadot?
Oh, that one comes up a lot. Red Notice. Yeah.
Right.
Where it almost feels like take, these big stars and like a action plot and just sort of put it into a computer and you got Red Notice.
Well, that's like Space Jam 2. Like if you told me that an AI wrote that, I would believe you.
Yeah, that was rough. I didn't even finish that one.
Yeah.
So I don't, but you can imagine if people are half looking at their phone and half looking at the thing that's on their television screen, they're like, yeah, it's fine. I don't know. Bugs Bunny was in it. Like that's my fear, is that like people might get sort of used to that. And then you might not even notice if it wasn't written, with much more humanity than that. So, but I would like to believe, this is my optimism speaking, I'd like to believe that Alvy's right, that most people will reject that. Like most people that are movie lovers sitting down, like this is what I'm choosing to do for the next 2 hours, won't put up with that, and will continue to support and show up and generate box office for movies that have more humanity to them.
Well, speaking of movies with humanity, I wanted to discuss the trailer for a movie. This trailer just dropped mere hours ago, Brian. As we are recording this. It is fresh off the boat. No, that's not right. Hot off the printer. I don't know. It's new is my point.
Right.
The ink is still dry on YouTube. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But I am talking about KRAVEN the Hunter.
Uh-huh.
Now, this is a movie that is based on a Marvel property that's among the rights that Sony holds. Sony's Cinematic Universe of Marvel, aka Scum.
Wait, so what do they own? I mean, is this a Spider-Man person or what's the...
They own the rights to Spider-Man and every character who was introduced in Spider-Man, in a Spider-Man title.
Okay.
Right. And so their whole, this is Marge Simpson trying to make that Chanel dress into every possible thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like you've got like Spider-Man has a great rogues gallery, and Sony's essentially saying, well, let's give every rogue their own film.
Right.
And then we can spin stuff off from those movies and away we go. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, one of the worst things that could have possibly happened is that the first Venom came out in 2018 and made, just ungodly amounts of money.
Yeah.
And this is what I call rewarding bad behavior.
Okay.
Because Sony's like, all right, well, shit, get out of the way. We about to do this.
Okay. This is kind of fascinating because before we hopped on, Mike, you said, all right, we got to talk about KRAVEN the Hunter. You got to watch the trailer. And I was like, what's a KRAVEN the Hunter?
Exactly.
And so I watched it and I was like, okay. And then I didn't know where you were coming from. I was like, maybe this is like some character that you grew up with that you were like, check this out. So this is,
yeah.
I was feeling a little like, oh no. Yeah. Well, you know what's funny though? Speaking of Venom, I don't really tend to like those movies, but I will admit they are very watchable.
I'll go with you as far as the first one.
Yeah,
I begin to tell you what's in the second one. I could not tell you what happens in the second one, except that Woody Harrelson has a red fright wig.
Exactly. I was gonna say the only thing I remember is the red curly wig, and then Venom like cooking for Tom Hardy and just like making a mess in his kitchen. And I'm like, I don't like this, but like if they make a third one, I'll be like, all right, well, I mean, it's going to be wacky. Let's see.
I will admit that the conceit of essentially turning Eddie Brock and the parasite living inside him, turning that into basically, Bert and Ernie.
Yeah.
That tickles me, I will admit.
Agreed.
Right. Now, of course, they also tried this with Morbius, which was either a year ago or 500 years ago. I don't know when that movie came out.
Yeah.
And it didn't do so well from what I recall. Now, KRAVEN the Hunter is a Spider-Man villain. He's like one of the main ones that was introduced in the first, 5 years of the character. And he's a great Spider-Man villain.
Okay.
But I think the idea of turning him into an anti-hero, it has me where I'm like, you know what this is, Brian? You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Black Adam. Where I'm like Black Adam should have been the villain in the second Shazam movie.
Uh-huh.
And then it would have elevated that movie. Instead, you got two mediocre movies.
Right.
And to me, that's this, at least just on first viewing, where the trailer, look, it's directed, by the way, by J.C. Shandor, who did, Brian, All Is Lost. I didn't realize.
Oh, I like him. Yeah, he did that other like trading movie.
Yeah, with what was it? Mark
Zachary Quinto and
yeah, what the hell is it called? I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting because I did not know that, and I like that guy. So
yeah, he's a good director. I mean, honestly, that's what has me interested to whatever extent I am in this. I'm like, well, he's an interesting director. Yeah. He also did a Margin Call. That's the one.
Margin Call and A Most Violent Year. Yeah,
Most Violent Year with Oscar Isaac.
Wow, I've liked all his movies. So, and Triple Frontier. Yeah. I like Triple Frontier also.
I like Triple Frontier also. Yeah. So that has me interested, and I think Aaron Taylor Johnson is sort of a blank slate where he's never particularly impressed me, but he's not. It's not a negative for me. You know
sure.
What I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm about the same.
And then Russell Crowe, by the way, did he like hit his head while making Thor, and now he just does accents now?
I'll admit, because this trailer looked like every other murky sort of looking modern film, I was like, wait, is he playing the same character from that like Mummy movie?
Well, that and he was just in something earlier today with a funny accent earlier this year. I mean, earlier this year. Sorry.
Was that?
You know what I'm talking about?
I remember
the Pope's Exorcist.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm just like, something happened when he was making that Thor movie where he can't switch back to his regular accent.
He's like, this is me now.
So anyway, I watched the trailer and I'm like, I don't care enough about KRAVEN the Hunter to spend 2 hours on this shit without Spider-Man, without Spider-Man webbing him.
See, okay, so going back to your Black Adam point, I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? Like, these are villains, so we should see them going toe to toe with our beloved hero, right? But like, if you're desperate to sort of continue spinning them out into new, tendrils of series, then you like weirdly have to milk them to some degree that, into something they aren't, right? Like, you have to make them like an anti-hero. And
exactly.
And they aren't. And so, yeah, it's like you're taking half a movie and trying to make a full movie out of it or something, and it can't help but feel that way a little bit.
It's with Venom, you say, well, there's precedent because for a long time in the comic books, he's had his own title, and he kind of became an anti-hero anyway in the 80s. In the 90s. Morbius, same deal. So there's precedent for that too. But again, like, this guy is just a straight up villain. I don't think he's interesting enough. He's interesting as a foil to Spider-Man. There's a great story in the 80s called Kraven's Last Hunt where he actually succeeds, or he thinks, in killing Spider-Man. And it's all about his psychological trauma and this and that. But like, it's interesting because you're like waiting for Spider-Man to come back. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this, I feel like, I mean, look, maybe you get something interesting. Maybe you get a Joker out of this.
Sure.
But like, what are the odds of that?
Right.
What are the odds that the second Joker is like the first Joker?
I'm very curious.
Right.
Very curious. I mean, it still blows my mind that the first one made $1 billion.
That yeah, and I wonder if that was a bit of a unicorn situation. Like I don't know that that's replicable, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah,
Next thing you know, they're gonna give the Penguin a TV show.
That's true. Which was one of the shows that just got shut down due to the
That's right.
WGA strike.
So hey, maybe that'll be something. But I'm just like, there's something very cynical about all this. That's my point. And I know I sound like an idiot. I'm like, what? Hollywood cynical?
Right.
Yeah, I get it. But it's like I found the trailer. I don't know. I'm like, would I? If not for the whatever name recognition KRAVEN the Hunter has, which even then, how much name recognition is that?
Mm-hmm.
Would it be appealing if it was its own thing?
Mm-hmm.
And me personally, not a ton. Like what has me interested is J.C. Shandor.
I didn't even know that. That is the only thing that is drawing me to this movie. And I didn't know this was a Spider-Man villain. And so when I was watching it, I was thinking like, what about this should make me feel like I need to get my butt in a car and go to the theater. Like it just looks like everything, you know what I mean? But there's, right. You know what I mean? Like there was no special appeal about it. It just kind of looked like sort of like a sizzle reel from like all movies of the past 10 years or so. So I was like, all right, you know, like, but why though? Why should I care enough to go see this? I did not sense that from the trailer. It just looked like more sort of, cloudy looking, you know, competently made action sequences and a villain that, or anti-hero, I don't know what to call him, is just like, okay, I don't know who that is. I don't know why I'm supposed to care. I don't know.
It does feel like Hollywood has been trying to make Aaron Taylor Johnson happen for a while now.
That's true, huh? Yeah, but he's hung in there. He keeps showing up and stuff. And I, like you said, I have nothing against him, but he hasn't really been in anything that's made me, you know, desire the next thing from him, I suppose. But he does fine in whatever he's in.
I mean, like, I think Kick-Ass, right? That's the first time he kind of got on my radar. And when was that? Like 2010 or something?
Yeah, but I mean, like, well, he's in Bullet Train. He was good in that. He was in Tenet. You know, he's good in that. Like,
I mean, he's fine in everything. Like, I haven't disliked him in anything.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But he just, I don't know that he's been the center of a film yet to make me sort of like a Chris Hemsworth or something, where you're like, oh, well, now I love Chris Hemsworth, you know, because he was the lead of this movie and I really got endeared to him. So now I will kind of follow his career, you know. Maybe this will do it.
Even Hemsworth gave an interview recently, sort of talking about like, you know, having to decide whether to come back for another Thor and things like that. And I was like, man, he's kind of in an interesting situation where it's like, when do you walk off the field as far as that character?
Yeah, because he's one of the core Marvel characters, cinematic characters that's still alive. So I mean, he could. Yeah, I'm sure they'd be happy for him to keep coming back as much as he'd like, but and
I'm sure he doesn't want the last one to be his last one.
I wonder. I mean, almost it's kind of an Indy 5 situation, huh? Like where I'm sure at some point he doesn't want people to get sick of him and he wants to step off the field, but like you want to go out strong, you know?
Yeah. So KRAVEN the Hunter, yet another in this year's slew of comic book movies that comes out in October. So I expect we'll be talking about that in just a couple months.
I guess. This is going to be one of those ones where I'm like, I'm sensing a Morbius experience for me, but which is to say, Morbius kind of got, you know, poked fun of a little bit or turned into a bit of a meme, but like
it's Morbin time.
Yes. But I didn't hate Morbius. I just was bored by Morbius. Like I felt like it didn't rise to anything. And that was why I didn't end up enjoying it. So honestly, this feels kind of similar if I'm sensing anything from the trailer where it's like, I mean, look, I get it. Like the action looks dynamic and, you know, well done and whatnot, but there was no draw, nothing specific that was a draw for me from this trailer. So we'll see.
Yeah. It's, I wonder like how I would look at, like, now I look at this and in the trailer you see him like slicing people's throats and he bites a dude's ear off and all this stuff. And I'm like, if I was, 13, would I be like, wow, that's awesome. He's so cool,
I have no idea. Yeah, this was a Red Band trailer, so I was like, oh.
Yeah.
We're watching the
I was
bullets
looking
go
for
in.
I was looking for a non-Red Band version and they only got the Red Band one. So you know who they're trying to appeal to.
Yeah.
But like, I remember here's my point. I remember being a kid and loving the Punisher, who absolutely was an anti-hero or is an anti-hero, right? Because he doesn't send the villains to jail. He kills them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being 13 or whatever, being like, yeah, it's so cool. Now, I don't think I was a particular sociopath when I was that age. I think,
right.
I hope anyway, I think that's just how kids are.
Right.
Sort of where you're like, you want the most badass thing, And now as an adult, I was having this discussion on Twitter recently where it's like, what's the appeal of the Punisher? And I was like, honestly, for me, I have like nostalgia for when I was a kid. That's what, but I don't find him an aspirational character because what he does is terrible. And I like him best as a counterpoint to the characters who are like, no, don't do that. Like, like keep people alive. That's,
Right. And
so anyway, my point is like that sort of like the appeal of Venom. Oh, he eats the criminals. That's so cool. I'm like, well, that's not appealing to me, but maybe people who are younger.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe if there's a theme to this episode, it's sort of,
it's us acknowledging mortality. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, with that, let's take a short break, and we'll come back and talk about the big new release in theaters.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18 plus.
And we are back. And, Brian, before we talk about The Flash, which is in theaters right now, I did want to take a brief moment and mention the passing of actor Treat Williams.
Yeah.
This one really, Treat Williams was a terrific actor. He just brought a unique personality to every role he played. And he'd been around all our lives in a variety of different roles. I mentioned during our commentary track for The Phantom, in which he played the villain, Xander Drax. Begins and ends with the letter X. I remember saying, I was like, I love how much fun Treat Williams was having, just hamming it up as this, this 1930s villain.
Yep.
So I think on some level, that's one of his performances I have the most affinity for. But I mean, he was in films. Prince of the City is the one that really earliest. That's one of my earlier memories of seeing him.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, that's a terrific movie. But he's in Once Upon a Time in America. Mulholland Falls. He was in a movie called Deep Rising with Famke Janssen that was directed by Steven Sommers.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny because I mean, I'm sort of sorry to say, like going through his filmography, it's like a lot of films I'm familiar with, but like, oh, I haven't seen that Deep Rising. I know that title, but I haven't seen it. Like, even Hair, I've never seen Hair. You know,
Hair, yeah. He was on Everwood, that CW show.
Uh-huh.
He is like the dad. You know what I mean? He had reached that phase
Right.
where you become dad on CW show.
Right.
Right, which is a certain career benchmark that a lot of these actors reach. But just sort of like a presence. Like he was somebody who, whenever he was in something, I was like, oh, Treat Williams, that's great. You know?
Mm-hmm.
He was 71 years old. He died in a motorcycle accident because somebody who was not paying attention hit him. And the one thing that I've seen in all the acknowledgments of his passing from people online, people who knew him, is just how kind he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was just a very kind person. He would always check in on you and things like that. And it just got, we talk about this a lot. I mean, ultimately that is what you leave behind, right? Your work and everything else notwithstanding. It's like, well, what kind of person were you?
Right.
And that was my thought. I was like, if nothing else, I would hope that whenever my time comes, I hope that people are able to look and say, he was a good guy. He was a kind person.
Right. Right. Yeah. More than anything else, it'd be nice to, like, yeah, they made me feel good. That'd be nice.
So I just wanted to mention that because I think he was an outsized presence, and he very much will be missed on screens and in the lives of the people who loved him.
Absolutely.
With that in mind, as I mentioned earlier, The Flash is in theaters right now, and it may be gone from theaters by the time people are listening to this episode.
What a ride.
I did not expect the nature of our conversation about this film to be in the form of an autopsy.
Not at all. I mean, if we had recorded this on Friday, like it would be an entirely different conversation.
That's right.
I'm sort of I'm still wrapping my head around everybody's responses to this movie. If I'm being honest, I am shocked. Honestly, I mean, there was so much hype, so much buildup, so much pre-buzz about it. I did not expect it to be called a flop when we arrived here on Monday.
That's I always wondered how much of an audience there was for this, but I assumed that we would be talking about it in terms of it being some degree of successful.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that it would be sort of a Green Lantern-esque catastrophe just wasn't on my radar.
You know what's funny though? I mean, to tip my hand a little bit here, I can't even process that, like, because I liked it. So I'm like, no, but Green Lantern was kind of like a mess, but I mean, in terms of box office, at least what you're saying, I mean, it did make the same amount of money as Green Lantern, which history is not viewed very favorably. And so it's just so weird for me. Then, we saw Flash last Thursday together, walked out like that was fun. And now here we are, having to see people comparing it to Green Lantern. I'm like, huh?
And by the way, the crowd we saw it with was, I would say, about 2/3 full.
Yeah. And then I saw it again with my brother on Saturday, and it was pretty full and people were responsive to the screen. So I was like, it seems like people are showing up and enjoying it. And so I'm kind of confused, honestly, by the reaction.
Well, and I think that there may be a variety of reasons why this thing sort of failed to take off, if you will, to race away with the crown. What other speed puns can we work in here? Slowed to a crawl.
Yes. I was gonna say we're gonna have to scatter them throughout the entire review.
Yeah. But let's talk about our reactions to the movie first.
Yeah.
And then we can get into some spoilers and then maybe intuit what maybe some of the reasons this thing just failed to launch.
Perfect. Yeah. Do you want me to go
now?
First?
You tipped your hand. You said you liked it.
I enjoyed it quite a bit, actually. Yeah. I think, we saw it on post. I mean, we had just seen Indiana Jones, and then a couple hours later we were watching this. And I will admit it felt a little busy to me while we were watching it. But at the same time, I was like, oh, that was a fun time. Like I enjoyed that. And then I saw it again with my brother, and it just like solidified my opinion. I was like, no, this is a fun movie. I think, when people speak of superhero fatigue, I think what they're referring to, even though it's different with everyone, but is kind of what I felt like I was seeing in the KRAVEN trailer, which is just like, guy gets thing, and then he's like, what's this thing? Okay, I'm going to use the thing. And then he fights some guys. And then, like it's just kind of the same sort of thing over and over. They kind of look the same. There's nothing that really distinguishes some of these movies from one another. Even when we enjoy them, like we can still say like, well, that was fun, but it just kind of felt like some of the others. But what I really liked about this movie was, I mean, there are a lot of tie-ins to other movies, no doubt, but it really did feel like the Flash's story. And the story, I mean, it's from the trailer. I mean, it's his mother has died in the past. His father is wrongly accused of her murder. He goes to jail, and he's like, well, what if I could go back in time and fix it? And I mean, it's a weird Back to the Future movie. And it's like, what if I change one thing and then it messes everything up? And how can I fix this? But what are the implications of that to the thing that I really care about? Like, and the whole movie really is all about this relationship between him and his mom. I mean, that's the movie. And I found it so refreshing, if I'm being honest. There's a lot of action and there's a lot of CG, which, the dodgy CG, they're not wrong. Like, but yeah. I think it really is a character movie at the heart of it, with all this superheroes, dressing on it. And I appreciated the journey that Flash went on. I was tracking with the character the whole time. I was rooting through the ups and downs. And then when all was said and done at the end, I felt the emotions the movie wanted me to feel. And I had a smile on my face. And so at the end, I was like, well, that was a success, Yeah. And so I guess at the end of the day, I'm just sort of confused for people that are even invested in this universe, what they didn't like. I would actually really love to speak to someone, because I'm very curious what they didn't like about the movie. I don't really see what there was. I think maybe James Gunn set it up in a way that he probably shouldn't have, saying it's one of the greatest superhero movies of all time. Is it? No, of course not. But like, right. Is it a good superhero movie? I wholeheartedly say yes. I think it's a good superhero movie. And one that really does lean into the characters and the heart and has a good time while doing both. And so I just don't know what there isn't, to like about it.
Well, when you have an opening this low, it's essentially, it's not even a question of people not liking it. People just didn't go.
Right.
Now, that being said, I mean, the cinema score, which does measure opening night attendance, was a B.
See, that's confusing to me. Because a B, sorry to talk over you, but yeah, for people who don't know, I mean, it sounds like, oh, B, that's not bad, right? But it's like, no, for cinema score, that's pretty bad.
That's bad, exactly. Yeah, I've had to explain this multiple times on Twitter over the last several days, where it's like, oh, B is good. It's like, no. That's opening night. That's the people who were invested enough to be there. So it's measuring their enthusiasm. So if you land lower than a B plus, you're in trouble territory. B plus is the basement for where you want to be.
Yep.
So that I was completely taken by surprise by that rating. And just to pick up on your thoughts about the film, I think, you and I kind of joked about, for the last however long this movie has been in development, especially once we learned that Michael Keaton was coming back. Like when's why is the Flash in this Batman movie? We kind of joked about that.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, the Flash story it's substantial, but it's emotionally fulfilling, in my opinion. However, I also felt, as someone who was very invested in the Keaton of it, I felt satisfied by how he was woven in, what he had to do, and it felt value added rather than sort of a bait and switch.
I totally agree. And I mean, we've been speaking for months about this, but that was the main appeal of this movie, was seeing my favorite Batman come back and hopefully be used well, or at least not just be some sort of cameo and then disappear from the film, but actually be incorporated and have a satisfying purpose within it. And for me, I mean, we can get more into the details about it. I mean, but I would say by and large, I was very much a fan of how he was used in the movie.
I would say too. And I would say, going back to what we were talking about earlier in this episode, I think that Michael Keaton, notwithstanding people like us, is not a draw for people who may like Batman, but don't have any real affinity for his iteration, which is 31 years old at this point.
Yeah, I this has sort of opened my eyes, ironically, that to the fact that I may have a blind spot, when it comes to that. But yeah,
like I don't really care, because they've said, like, whatever their plans were for Michael Keaton to remain in these films, I think those are pretty much out the window.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like, well, this is one more chance, probably the last chance, to see my favorite Batman be Batman again. I'm happy with what we got. And if that's all we ever get, hey, you know what? I got a good meal out of it. That's my perspective, honestly. And I say this about box office all the time. The budget doesn't come out of my pocket. The box office doesn't go into my pocket. I don't really care. Do I like the
right.
movie? Right.
Right.
And that's how I am with this. I think worth mentioning, Ezra Miller, who has been the subject of much controversy given their, really troubling behavior over however many, the past few years. Two things. Not in any way diminishing the seriousness of what they're accused of. Ezra Miller, however, is, and I have to acknowledge, very good in this movie.
I completely agree, and I'm glad that you brought Miller up, because as I was just going, why didn't people show up? La la la, it's so great. I was starting to feel a little like tone deaf to the fact that many people, including myself, reading some of the accounts and things that have happened with Miller over the past year or more, they're unpleasant, disturbing things. Yeah. And so it is absolutely understandable that some people may have felt strongly enough to not show up for that reason alone. I think that's totally. But I
wonder, Brian, how big of a percentage that is. I truly like, not diminishing that. Are there that many people out there who are like, well, I'm not going to watch this movie on principle because of Ezra Miller?
I mean, that's the thing. That's the unknowable thing. I don't. Yeah. I'm sure it factored for some, but to how many, I have no idea.
Yeah. But I mean, truly, I think Ezra Miller gets an arc in this. I think there's times where there's two Barry Allens, right? There's the 28-year-old Barry and the 18-year-old Barry playing off each other. And at least for me, I forget that, no, that's the same person.
It is some of the best, I don't know what you call that, like Parent Trap, where you have the one actor playing two people. And it used to be like you just had to split the screen, right? And they couldn't touch each other or something. Like, it is incredible what they pull off. It's crazy the way that they're touching one another, and the camera moves, and you completely buy the effect 100%.
Yeah. I think sort of that, in all the noise about the CGI being kind of dicey at times, like that's sort of getting lost. Is there some remarkable effects work in this film, just by virtue of that, like the effects you're not consciously aware of, but that's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of the CG, I mean, are they talking about the Chrono Bowl thing, or is it? I mean, I know the babies, and even when I was watching it, I was like, yeah, I don't know what they were thinking with the babies, but I mean, it just looked bad. But in the Chrono Bowl, it felt like a stylistic choice.
Okay, so thank you for bringing that up. I wanted to mention that. So Andy Muschietti, who we should mention, who directed this movie, Andy Muschietti did the two It movies. Not some flash in the pan, Brian.
Lovely.
He knows what he's doing. He has, by the way, been signed to direct The Brave and the Bold, which is the Batman movie that's going to exist in this new universe, and I think is a good choice, by the way. But he has said, look, the effects work within the Speed Force, that is by design, and he was referring both to the baby scene, which is in the very beginning, and then the Chrono Bowl stuff, and he's like, it's meant to look a little wonky and a little weird because that's Barry's perspective, and people are just shit piling him. Whatever, and I'm like, well, he's not an idiot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't dismiss what he's saying. As far as the stuff in the Chrono Bowl specifically, like people are like, oh, it looks like a video game from 10 years ago. And I'm like, especially having watched it twice, I'm like, it feels like when like you're an NPC, like in a video game. That's sort of by design. That's what it felt like to me, because it's putting you in this situation where you're seeing all these perspectives, and it's in essence like being in a video game, and you just pick the path that you want to take.
Yeah, that didn't bother me at all. I will admit it did. I noticed it. The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, that's weird. They look, sort of like a cartoon version of these actors. But then I was like, oh, well, that's what this thing is. Kind of like you said. Yeah, he's sort of picking a level to return to. And I could totally buy that. I think the babies might have worked a little better if they had not looked like these weird cartoon things. But
I think that if you have to imagine that if everyone else is having that reaction, then there were plenty of times in the testing process.
Yes.
Forget even testing. Like in studio, you're showing it to people in the production chain who would have said, it doesn't look right.
Right.
So I think while I understand his intentions, I think it may have been a mistake to leave it that way and just not try to do something a little bit straighter, more reflective of reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Agreed. And also, I mean, just that was the only sequence that I would say like, I have a note.
Well, and I think the problem is that you're leading with that,
Yeah, it's true. Well, it's been such a conversation, and it's so funny. Like I said, if we had recorded this on Friday, this would be a totally different sort of review. But it is. I'm sort of now weirdly feel like I'm like almost defending the movie as I talk about liking it. But yeah, like that's just been one of the main criticisms that's been coming up all weekend is like bad CG, Ezra Miller, and also a thing that's been coming up a lot is like, well, James Gunn is basically closing down this universe, so what does this story even matter?
Yes. So, well, you know what? Let's talk about that. Let's do that on the other side of spoilers. But before we do that, just to tie a bow around the thing with the babies, for people like, what the hell are you talking about? So there's a sequence in the beginning of the film where the Flash, it's to introduce the audience to what the Flash can do. So you have a hospital wing. By the way, the Martha Wayne Institute, I think I saw the sign that says this hospital wing is collapsing, and so there's this maternity ward with babies in rolling baskets that end up falling out the window. And so now in Flash speed, he has to rescue all these babies. And he glances this way and there's like a baby falling and there's like knives coming at it. And he glances this way and there's a baby falling and there's like a bottle of acid that's about to fall on it,
Yeah.
And I found it amusing.
I was laughing. It was so absurd and funny.
Yeah. I mean, it reminded me of, in The Naked Gun, I think in 33 and a Third, where it's like the Untouchables sequence, and then it's all the babies and like going down the steps, and Frank Drebin has to rescue them all.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I saw somebody online make the exact same comparison, and they were like, and that's why I hated it, because I don't want to be reminded of Naked Gun. And I was like, all right, maybe I'm a bad person. That I find it. I'm amused by the notion of the Flash having to rescue a baby from, acid falling on. I don't know. It's
weird. It kind of set the tone for the movie for me, where it's like, this is a little lighter. This isn't Batman,
that's right.
That's sort of the trope, right? Like, is a baby in a runaway, stroller and someone's got to save it, right? But like, when you have someone like the Flash who's this fast, it's like, no, you have 8 babies, and you have to get like super clever to like, I don't know. I thought it was funny. So,
so that's us on the intro, and so that's where we both stand on the Flash. With that said, let's get into some deeper territory on the other side of the spoiler wall.
Spoilers.
Okay, so you mentioned James Gunn, and James Gunn, for those of you who don't know, he is the new head of DC as of last October, I think.
Mhm.
And I think like a few months ago, whenever it was, he announced, "Oh, we have a whole new slate of DC projects that are coming out. So the universe that you have known for 10 years, that's going bye-bye, and we're starting fresh with the new Superman film that's coming out in 2025, and blah, 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 blah." And I mean, just a list of titles as long as your arm, right?
Mhm.
And at the time we discussed it, we were like, all right, cool, right? I mean, I think that was the context in which, like, sounds interesting, we'll leave it when it happens, kind of thing, right?
Mhm.
Now, with the benefit of hindsight, and with the benefit of now 2 back-to-back flops by DC in the wake of James Gunn's announcement, I'm curious what you think, Brian. Did James Gunn make a strategic error by essentially shining a big red light on the idea that everything that's in the barrel for DC does not matter, quote unquote,
Mhm.
because the real stuff, quote unquote, starts 2 years from now?
I have 2 thoughts about this. One, quite possibly. I mean, I think just because DC has had some, turbulence over the years, and then being like, you know what, actually, we're gonna start over, saying that does make it feel like, all right, and so then we'll toss these out there, and then we're gonna, like you said, like then the real show begins. Like I could see a lot of people interpreting it that way, but I don't know. I guess for me, someone who's not as dedicatedly invested in DC specifically, or even Marvel, like I just want to see a good movie. Like I'm not. I know that I've said that I think it's admirable that Marvel has made these sort of chapters, that kind of, they can be their own thing, but it's kind of interesting, like how it's like a larger part of a book, and it makes me forgive some of their movies because I'm like, well, it's just chapter 37, in this book of 50 chapters. But I would like, at the end of the day, I mean, I kind of don't want that. I want each movie to be able to stand on its own, and it's cool if it can be connected to something else. But like, if I go to see a Flash movie, I'm not seeing a Flash movie because I also want to know what's going to happen next in Aquaman. Like, I want to go see a Flash movie, and I think that's something that I liked about this movie, is it started as a Flash movie and it ended as a Flash movie. Like, this movie is all about the Flash. It just happens to bring these other multiverse characters in to support the Flash in his story. And so at the end of the day, I just think it was a good movie.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of a bummer then to think that some people are like, well, if this doesn't work as a successful chapter in a larger book, then it's a failure, or something I'm not interested in, I should say.
Think about it this way. If we think of it as like death from 1,000 paper cuts, right? You've alienated people who are taking a stance on, I don't want to support anything with Ezra Miller in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's that audience gone. You've alienated the Zack Snyder faithful, who, as a matter of principle, anything that he's not involved in, I'm not going to. Okay, so that audience gone. You've alienated now the people who maybe were invested in the DC universe, because they're like, well, I'll get to it when I get to it, because the real stuff starts in 2 years. So that audience gone. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you stack enough of those things up, and eventually, it's a pretty wobbly Jenga tower.
Well, you're bringing me out of my little bubble, because when you say all those things, I can understand how someone might feel those things. What got me in, frankly, was Keaton.
Yeah, and there ain't enough of us.
Yeah, but then I showed up, and I feel like I was treated to a delightful film. So,
well, and that's the thing, right? Because I was actually thinking about it. I was like, you can say, oh, Keaton wasn't enough to make this thing a hit, and I'm kind of like, well, Keaton was probably the reason it got to where it did.
I wonder,
because there is another factor you have to consider, which is that streaming has sort of conditioned people to add an extra tier to when they decide to watch a movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Pixar, right? They got Elemental in theaters this weekend. It opened this weekend, tanked.
Yep.
And I think part of that is because Pixar is not the draw that it once was, where I got to go rush right out to see it. It'll be on Disney Plus in 6 weeks.
And the past several of their films, not including Buzz Lightyear, did go straight to streaming. So it's like, well,
and think about it, Brian. To that point, Buzz Lightyear. Remember, people dogpiled on that because it's like another mercenary IP grab. Well, who's to say that just the fact that it is Buzz Lightyear that actually helped it from doing worse?
Sure. And I saw, this might have already been announced, but I saw something about Toy Story 5. Right. And I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense.
Now, yeah.
Yeah.
What convoluted reason are they going to find to get Buzz and Woody back together?
I have no idea. Like, they'll have to interrupt Woody's honeymoon. Actually, that'd be kind of
funny. Okay, but now that all of that out of the way, I mean, obviously Michael Keaton it was for we've been talking about his imminent return for like 2 years, on this show. 3 years, since 2020. Now that we've seen it, it's been 31 years since Michael Keaton last played Batman. What did you feel being dropped back into his world?
It's funny you say his world, because the movie sort of consciously sidesteps any like Burton-isms, right? Because it was interesting how they treated the multiverse in this movie. They give this whole analogy or metaphor with like spaghetti, right?
I love how every multiverse movie has to have somebody designated to give, quote, the speech.
And also it seems like recently, like, I know you've seen Back to the Future. It's not like right. Back to the Future. Like,
and in this, it's, I know you've seen Avengers Endgame, but it's
right. Like exactly. Which, by the way, did you notice? I mean, they reference Back to the Future a lot without ever saying its name. I noticed that the second time they keep saying, like, yeah, Michael J. Fox played Marty McFly.
They say like BTTF.
They say BTTF, and that's it. Yeah, but that was
I wanted to mention real quick about that, because it's a plot point that something is wrong, because in this universe or in this timeline, Eric Stoltz played Marty,
which is hilarious.
It's very funny, and we take for granted that everybody knows, like, the close call there.
Yes,
but that is assuming a lot, right, from the audience.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, it's just such but you're right.
The other thought I had, I was going to text you this, but then I was like, I'll just tell you. I was like, I wonder if Eric Stoltz is in the theater watching this, opening weekend, and does he give a bemused chuckle, or does he stand up and say, "Okay, I wasn't in a movie 50 years ago. Let me live my life," and just storms out?
Very possible.
Right?
Very possible.
Like that's he's had a long, distinguished career, but his biggest credit is the one he doesn't have.
Well, it's, and maybe I'm just speaking from where I'm standing, but I feel like it's not like everyone is wiping their brow and going, phew, we dodged a bullet. It's more like this fascinating curiosity, like, oh, wow, did you know this? Like, it feels like it's, you know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like it's this huge, like, oh, wow, oh, thank God that didn't happen, sort of a feeling. So like, hopefully he can just be amused that people are interested in that tidbit. But then again, actually I keep forgetting the fact that he was fired from this. So I mean,
that's
this
what I'm
is
saying.
Like,
so he was fired from this movie, 40 years ago, and now it's the sign that you are in the wrong universe. If you weren't fired from that movie,
that is okay. Yeah. Yeah, maybe if I saw him, I'd give him a little pat on the back. I don't know. You're great in Pulp Fiction. But
with Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
From water electrolyzers to flow batteries and fuel cells, Nafion proton exchange membranes play a major role in advancing the hydrogen economy. Through their high conductivity, superior strength, and chemical durability, Nafion membranes provide the performance needed to make green hydrogen safer, more sustainable, and more affordable. Learn how Nafion ion exchange materials support the decarbonization of energy across the globe at www.nafion.com.
Yeah, but no, that was a funny little, like whiff of like something's not right here.
Something's not right. Yeah, yeah.
But yes, I mean, so they going all the way back. So basically, they're saying like this isn't like you just created some sort of little bend into another, like a little branch. It's like no, you kind of cut things in half, and it can affect the things that came before it, and it's like this big twisted bowl of spaghetti, so he might not be in exactly the Burton version that we know. That might not be exactly his what Gotham looks like and whatnot, which is kind of clever because then you avoid having to do all that. But somebody was asking that online where like, okay, so does this mean that like Burton's Earth is destroyed at the end of this movie? And I was like, no, I mean that's what the spaghetti scene lets you do, is just say, look, it's all timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, intersecting. So Barry does something here. It creates a new fulcrum. And so the Batman from this Earth is merged with this one. And the only one who's aware of the change is Barry because he's the one who instigated the change. Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I mean, anything goes,
Yeah, which I think is very smart, right? And then I think additionally smart is then not to change Keaton's Batman. I mean, he still behaves like, like Michael Keaton, and he, still has, he has the same Batmobile in this universe, the Batcave. Actually, you pointed this out to me as kind of a funny hybrid, right? Of the version that we know from Burton, but it's also somewhat shares features with the Nolan Batcave with the waterfall outside. But yeah, and I mean, I think it's perfect because he is integral to the plot. He helps out. He gets to kick ass. He gets to fly his Batwing. And we're past spoilers now. So, and then he has what I think is a meaningful death, and the death actually serves our character also, and so, yeah, I think it's everything we could have hoped for as fans of Michael Keaton's Batman. I mean,
I thought so. Somebody pointed out that they make a big show of having the younger Barry pull the tarp off the Batmobile, and we get that hero shot, and he's like, "Wow, this is great!" And then, like, that's it. He never drives the thing, and and I was like, "Well, yeah," but to me, it's like going through a museum, or as a fan.
It's so funny. You can like almost see it two ways. Like it could be Chekhov's 89 Batmobile just because we're so in love with it. So you're like, well, obviously that's got to pay off. But I think you're right. Like if you take a step back, from our sort of salivating, it's just kind of like, yeah, like, yep, this is the Batman and love. Like this is the stuff in his cave.
Yeah, he kept the Joker's laugh box.
Right, right. Yeah, that was a fun.
Sure, he did. I mean, it's. Again, I going back to what you're saying. I mean, it's. I guess it is just about how you choose to view it. And it is cynical. It's about, hey, remember this, remember that, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm getting this thing I never thought I'd get again.
Mm-hmm.
So I will just enjoy all of it. Hey, look, he must have been king of the Wicker people. I got to see that again.
Yes, I know. Yes.
Which I should point out, it was a different room in the '89 movie because you had exterior windows in this one. So,
interesting.
Bruce moved some stuff around. That kitchen that they find Bruce in, I'm pretty sure that's the same kitchen that he eats with Vicky and Alfred in '89.
I would have thought so. Yeah, it resembled it enough.
I think that actually the other thought I had is that when we first meet him, he's got kind of the big fake wig and everything, and it's setting it up like, oh, this Batman is a broken shell of a man, right? But actually he's like, look, they don't need me anymore. Like what he did worked.
Yeah, he says Gotham is one of the safest cities in the world now.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, that's good. I like that.
If I have one thing that I would have liked to have seen built out a little bit more. And it worked for me. I was like, overall. So it didn't ruin the movie. But, and I had read also that I guess the original cut of this was like 4 hours, right? You know, so a million things they probably chopped out.
Hashtag release the machete cut.
Yeah.
Machete cut.
Yes. But I wouldn't have minded getting even a little bit more into Bruce's head. Like, well, how do you feel about that? You know, because just to give him even a little bit more of an arc. And they do subtly, because after one of the battles, you see him sewing up his arm and he looks at himself in the mirror and smiles. Like,
he smiles. I loved that.
Fantastic.
Right?
And I wouldn't have minded just a little more setup of like, yeah, now I'm bored. Like, I actually, got something out of this. Yes, at first it was, trying to bring my parents back, but then I started to feel like I needed it or whatever, and now they don't need me or something. And just a little something like that to make the smile, which was already amazing, but to make it even more.
I agree 100% with what you're saying. But what I will say is what they give us in this tracks as an arc, as enough of an arc where when at the very end or near the end, Barry's like, I can't bring you back, can I?
Yep.
And he says, you already did.
Yep.
Like, to me, I found that meaningful.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was enough there, but just because I love the character so much.
Oh, give me, half an hour more of Michael Keaton, in his cardigan, just like, walking around Wayne Manor. I'm fine
doing Wordle in the morning.
Yeah. That's right. The scene in the Batcave where he talks about, where he's talking to Barry about like all the everything he devoted his life to, and ultimately, he never could bring his parents back. To me, I loved it as like, here is that guy from 30 years ago, 30 years later. It to me, it retrospectively enriches those previous two films.
Yeah. Totally. Well, likewise, a little bit who I felt I enjoyed, but wouldn't have minded just even a teensy bit more is Supergirl.
Yes.
And I mean, it's enough. It is enough. But like, you can imagine it would to sit down and have one conversation with her and just sort of get in her head even just a little bit more. But that's a minor complaint, because I feel like I could tell you everything she went through in this movie, and her, not liking humans for what they put her through, but then showing up at the end to help out, and it was still good, but I wouldn't have minded more.
So, worth mentioning that this film is sort of freely adapted from a comic book series called Flashpoint, written by Jeff Johns, which in the comic books, that was what ultimately led to the DC reboot called The New 52 back in 2011. And in that storyline, very similar, Barry goes back into the past to save his mom, ends up creating a new timeline, which is far wackier than the one here. But in that timeline, Thomas Wayne became Batman instead of Bruce.
Oh.
Because Bruce was killed.
Oh, wow.
And it's very similar, though, where Barry seeks out the help of that universe's Batman, who uses a jury-rigged thing to give him his powers back. It's playing a lot of those same beats. So I thought that storyline from the comics was an effective hook or clothesline to hang these concepts on.
Totally.
In a way that made it relevant to this universe. I liked the little thing they inserted about how when General Zod first attacked, Barry was actually there.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Bruce Wayne was there. I think it adds a little meaning to that movie from 10 years ago.
Totally.
Michael Shannon, who's back as General Zod, has given interviews where he's kind of famously apathetic.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's any other flavor of Michael Shannon other than apathetic. I find that to be his charm.
Totally. And I mean, he's talking about how he felt just like an action figure to be shoved around. And to be fair, I mean, he kind of is in this movie, but I think it was in service of, sort of the Back to the Future 2-ness of it all, where it's like, well, we're going to insert this action into another movie's climax and see it from a different perspective. And I appreciated that take. I thought that was really fun.
I should mention
it doesn't give him a lot to do.
Real quick, I should mention I got a message from David Gutierrez on Facebook, and he said, "What role has Michael Shannon liked? Seems like he just hates working."
That's funny.
I said he's just droll. I think that's his way. And David responded, "I want to see him and Brian Hall talk. Will the universe explode?"
That is funny because there was a period where I was working for like an entertainment outlet briefly, and the first interview I was ever supposed to do was with Michael Shannon.
Wow, look at
So
that.
that's funny.
So we might have rewritten reality without realizing. That might have been another Flashpoint incident.
Yeah, for some reason it fell apart, but yeah, if I was in the universe where I did speak to him, who knows where I'd be right now.
That's hilarious. Yeah, here's the thing though, and we talked about this the day we saw it. I like that General Zod is not, in fact, the big bad.
Yes.
Of this movie. I think he plays a role, and I think it is integral in the story. Shannon's not wrong. I mean, he's essentially just moving around and throwing, CGI punches. But what it comes down to is Barry's metaphorical and literal battle with himself, and that allows for, I think, in my opinion, a very meaningful climax. Now, before we get to that, we should talk about the whole, worlds colliding of it all, because this is another thing that's got people quite perturbed, right? Where I actually, the mechanics of the third act totally track for me. I totally get it, because they're attempting to stave off the invasion. Batman dies; he blows himself up. Supergirl dies, and I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh, damn! Okay, I guess that's it," you know. And then they wind it back. I was like, "Hey, another chance!" And then Batman dies again.
Yep.
And that's where I was like, "Well, if that is his ending, I think both endings are noble, good endings. I did not have a problem, but." As setting up this idea of the younger Barry who's never experienced loss. And he knows that old Barry came back and changed the past so that mom lives. Why wouldn't he be like, I'm just going to keep going until I fix it? Like, as a character beat, it totally works. And it allows us to get a more meaningful window into older Barry, and sort of that he doesn't want to become that, right? Internally, above and beyond what's happening to the universe.
100%. I mean, I think stepping back even further, the two Barrys were really great realized characters. You have the Barry who's experienced loss and behaves a certain way, and you have the younger
when he
Barry.
yells at him in the cave.
Yes, I was going to bring that up. That's one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah,
this is a movie, or like, where you can imagine, or like a superhero movie where they're like, yeah, I don't know if this. Let's just keep moving. Like, you could imagine that scene being chopped.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's so important to this story. And that's why I think it's such a great story, is it's, so the younger Barry always had his parents, and he's kind of a goofball, you know what I mean? And the older one, just saying like, you don't know what you have. And just seeing how they're different perspectives on the ending. That's a good story. That's a good story. And that younger Barry becomes the villain. He's the villain of the movie.
That's right.
It's like, I'm so baffled that people didn't like this movie. I think it's so good.
Well, and the idea that with every trip back in time, they're just they're mixing up that bowl of spaghetti more and more.
Yes.
So that we get cameos from, this is off top of my head, we see George Reeves as Superman.
Yeah.
We see a person who is meant to be the Jay Garrick Flash.
Okay.
And I think it's confusing that they put like somebody random in there, because people are sort of thinking it's a cameo, but it's not. It's just a guy. Jay Garrick being the Golden Age Flash, the original Flash before Barry Allen. We also see the Adam West Batman. Yeah.
Yep.
And we hear Cesar Romero's Joker.
Yep.
Christopher Reeve and Helen Slater are digitally recreated.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course we get Am I missing anyone other than Nicolas Cage? I think that's it, right?
Not that I remember. Yeah.
And then we get Nicolas Cage playing the Superman that he never got to play in the Tim Burton movie, and up to and including fighting a giant spider, or as Kevin Smith put it, a Thanagarian snare beast.
Right. Right. Which is just absolutely amazing. You know what I mean? Like the fact that sort of geeky internet lore is now canon, I guess.
And this is the thing. I mean, I think it really does get to how cynical you want to be about this stuff. I will say, as far as Reeve and Helen Slater, I did not mind their inclusion. I think if they would have found some archival footage to use, I probably would have preferred that.
Sure.
Because all the deep the deep fakery and the uncanny valley, we haven't quite licked that yet.
Yeah, agreed.
Not a deal breaker for me. The Nicolas Cage thing, I was like, who's that going to matter to? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And maybe that just tells you about how much of a narrow casted audience these movies are being aimed at now, that it's just sort of implicit. Well, you're going to know this.
That my brother knew, which I was a little surprised, and I wasn't sure. I should say I didn't know if that was something he was aware of, but that does feel like a Reddit tidbit that comes up every now and then, you know. But it also is sort of like, well, why not? Like, I mean, if you're doing a movie that's throwing all this stuff at the wall, and like, what if DC, turned into a bowl of spaghetti, like, and someone brought that up, it's like, how could you not include it? You know.
Well, and above and beyond that, Brian, I kind of love that this movie is unabashedly saying Ben Affleck Batman, Michael Keaton Batman, spoiler alert, George Clooney Batman, and Adam West Batman, they're all in the mix. They're all in that bowl of spaghetti.
Yep.
I love that. Maybe I wouldn't have loved it 30 years ago. I don't know. But I love it now.
Same. I don't know what's not to love about it. And maybe, especially, I guess, having been conditioned more to multiverse stories these days.
That's true. But, because it's very, Grant Morrison, who had a run writing the Flash comics, he wrote Justice League, etc. Grant Morrison identifies as non-binary. So they have written really the definitive works when it comes to sort of a modern multiverse approach to DC. And Grant Morrison's whole thesis is everything counts. Every Batman story, whether Batman is, doing something super ground level or he's off on another planet somewhere, everything counts. Because it all exists, and whatever you want to pull from, you pull from, and you can come up with whatever explanation you want. And I certainly now, as a much older fan of this stuff than I was, when I was really ensconced in it, I love that. I love the ability of opening your arms and saying, I want as much of this stuff to count, as opposed to, nope, that one doesn't work, that one doesn't work, that one, and you're closing doors. Why not leave all the doors open? And so, I mean,
are people feeling the opposite?
I think there is a tendency among a lot of people, I don't know how many, to sort of wanting it to be sort of the most serious version of itself.
Sure.
Right. So in other words, Batman should only be the way Christopher Nolan envisioned him.
Okay, sure.
It's just using that as an example. And maybe that's because when you're of a certain age, that's what you've been sort of introduced into, right? But in our lifetimes, we've seen quite the spectrum. And this was you during your, during our Batman and Robin commentary track. Neither of us, I would say, are big fans of it. But what you said during that commentary track was, with the benefit of time, 20 years of distance at that point, you're like, it's just another Batman. It's not the one I like, but it's there. And it's, there's this one and this one and this one.
Yep.
And that was something, honestly, you really opened my mind to that. Like, yeah, it's okay for it not to be the best or the most important. It's just another one. It's another toy in the chest.
Right.
And if I can jump forward to the very, very ending of the movie, and we'll talk about that more later, but you have George Clooney show up at the end.
Yeah.
And you're able to laugh at it and be like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's cool for so many reasons. It's cool because it's funny. And I'm familiar with that version of Batman, but there's also like a meta-ness to it where Clooney has taken so much on the chin for that movie. And it's kind of endearing to see him be like, yep, that's right. I'm Batman. Like as he steps out of the car, you're sort of like, good for you. Good for you.
Well, and the other fact is that he's such a big star that even if you don't know he played Batman, the joke still works.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, in this universe, George Clooney's Batman.
Uh-huh. Right.
He without having no knowledge of Batman and Robin.
Right.
We'll cycle back around to the ending. I did want to mention one of my favorite parts of the whole movie is when Barry goes back to the grocery store to undo what he did previously.
Yeah.
And he has his final, he gets to sort of make peace with his mom, or his not being able to save her. And I don't know, man. It got me emotional both times.
Yeah, I mean, in a superhero movie, like two of the most memorable scenes is him getting to see his mother alive again, for the first time in many years, and putting that can into the cart and feeling like I did it. I saved my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple, just putting the can in the cart. And then at the end where he realizes he has to take it out. Oh, yeah. And he's got those like borrowed sunglasses and you see the tear, come down Barry's face. Like I got emotional both times I watched it.
Yeah.
It's just so
well. And when he does the whole litany on his own, love you more, love you first. Oh my God. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the main complaint in a lot of superhero movies where it's like the climax just becomes some sort of big CGI punch fest. And then eventually someone wins. And you have a little bit of that in here, even though I didn't think it was that bad. But like, this is the climax, and it's so
That's
powerful.
Right. Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. And that I care. You know what I mean? Like, I really cared about this character and their journey and the lesson they learned and what they have to let go of, to fix everything.
Now that being said, Brian, he's learned not to change the past, so he still changes the past.
He does. And it's funny because the worst thing that comes of that is that George Clooney is now Batman, but it's like if the movie were to continue, we might see further nightmares playing out.
George Clooney has a lizard tongue.
Yeah, exactly.
Barry, what are you talking about?
Yeah, kind of like Homer in the toaster.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now it's left vague because maybe he just absent-mindedly put the can on the top shelf.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Or in my head, I guess I had thought he had rearranged everything, but you're right. Maybe
that's what somebody else is saying. They don't show it specifically what he does.
Uh-huh.
That's true. See him. You see from the perspective of the security camera, he looks up.
Right.
And so maybe he realizes at that moment he can make a change. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I mean, it is left vague enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if the whole message is like, hey, don't change the past. He's like, well, I'm not going to do this. I'll just do this.
Right. That's a good point.
Now that being said, it from a timey-wimey perspective, you can say, well, the footage was corrupted for that entire time. It only becomes usable in the present because of Wayne technology, right? So he can sort of maybe justify it in his own mind. Like, I'm not changing anything in the past that would have already happened.
Right. Well, that's true. And his dad has been in jail the entire time. It's now is the unknowable if time has always existed.
Right. Exactly.
Moving forward with the dad being out of jail is what changes.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's we can justify it that way.
Yeah.
Now that said, first of all, I thought that was an effective culmination of that story. Now the Clooney, when I went to the screening, I went to about a week and a half before it came out, and that week, that was the first, because it was Monday night, so they told us that was the first time the complete film was being shown. And so up until then, versions that were screened did not have the Clooney ending.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And I went with Pervez, who I used to co-host Diffuse Congruence with, and I was joking, like, oh, I think they might introduce the new Batman for the DC universe in this. And I was like joking, I was like, it'd be funny if it's like George Clooney.
Ah!
I swear to God I said that.
Wow.
And then that happened. I was like, well, I'll be damned. The version they screened at CinemaCon had just, you see like feet getting out of the car.
Yeah.
And we cut to Barry and he's like, who the F is that?
Right.
Which might have been a better ending if they had planned to go somewhere with it, but I guess it's irrelevant now that it's a cul-de-sac. There were 2 prior endings to the Clooney one.
Right.
That were shot and discarded. The first, which I saw, I don't know if you saw it, I saw production stills of, where it's at the courthouse and it's Michael Keaton.
Mm-hmm.
And so the car pulls up and Keaton is there and Sasha Kaye is there as Supergirl. And so somehow that's the timeline that Barry has changed.
Right.
And then as of last October, they changed it so that it's Keaton, Sasha Kaye, Henry Cavill, and Gal Gadot. To be like, hey, there's Wonder Woman 3 coming and Henry Cavill's coming back in Man of Steel. We got plenty of stuff. And then James Gunn came in. It's like, well, no Wonder Woman 3. No Henry Cavill. So at that point, I would say, and admittedly, you know where I'm coming from, well, then give us the original Michael Keaton ending.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, and then the joke is still, oh, it's not Ben Affleck.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope that those endings will be made available in some form.
This is one of the first movies in a while that if they put a significant amount of the changes that they have done to this film as bonus features, I would buy it to watch them.
Yeah. Do give us like a seamless branching thing where you can just pick your ending,
pick your universe.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's irrelevant at this point because this version of the Flash is finished anyway.
Yeah.
I think we're effectively done with that. Now, but that being said, I did like the George Clooney ending. I thought it was funny. It did work for me. So the movie as it is was fine, but yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to know that Keaton's version lives on,
Right.
But there's nothing to say that we won't see him again or can't see him again.
It's true.
But and then there's the thing at the end with the post-credit scene where we see that Aquaman still exists.
Yeah, which it's funny because I felt kind of weird and purposeless when I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned that it was basically cut in half. Like there was more to it, but it was like set up for further films that are now not going to happen.
Right. So we got the Aquaman movie coming, and I'm sure they want to be clear, like, oh, that still exists.
Yeah, he's not a dog in this universe. He's still around.
Right. Yeah. Now, Brian, I got to say, if I were to guess, I think Aquaman 2 is also going to flop.
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, I think you're probably right, but the last one was, a $1 billion movie that seemed pretty beloved. So I wonder, if those people will still care and be happy to see their person again, or if because they've learned that this book is closing, that they don't care to read the last chapter. I don't know.
Yeah. And I also think, I mean, by the time it comes out, it'll have been 5 years.
Wow.
Since the first one, which is an eternity when it comes to these things.
That's true.
So there's also that. There was something else I wanted to mention too, and now I can't remember. Ben Affleck. I like what Ben Affleck got to do in this.
Same. I agree. I enjoyed seeing him at the beginning, his adventure, and getting the Wonder Woman's lasso of truth around his arm was hilarious.
Do you wonder if Gal Gadot, like the same day she showed up for her Shazam cameo, just like walked her into the adjacent soundstage, like, hey, here, lasso of truth, something, and then she,
like Krusty recording his talking doll. Hey, let me go.
Hey. Yeah. It's Slideshow Mel. Sideshow Mel.
Yeah. Bing, bang, boom. That's how you do it.
And she's done now too. So, James Gunn, man, just burning the joint down.
I know.
But it's been 10 years since Man of Steel, and this is effectively Aquaman notwithstanding. I guess Blue Beetle, that's coming. Let's be honest, that's probably not going to do well either. At this point, I'll be surprised.
Yeah,
I think that there's reason to suspect that between Black Adam, Shazam, and Flash, we're not seeing a one-off. We're seeing a trend.
Yeah, I think so.
So with that in mind, any other thoughts?
No, just thumbs up for me. I think if you want to have a good time, go see a fun, emotional, superhero movie. Like, go see The Flash. I think you'll enjoy it. I don't know.
We hope.
I did.
Let us know. Let us know your thoughts.
Yes.
You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there, again, with your thoughts on The Flash or anything else we talked about this episode, or just whatever you want to, shoot the shit about. Whatever. We're game. It's like
Absolutely.
your neighborhood bar. Also, as always, please go to Apple Podcasts, leave a review. We are at just under 100 reviews, and I would love to crest that number soon if possible. So if you like what we're doing, then leave a star rating or a review. Every little bit helps. And if you're looking for me online, you can find me on Twitter at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. I'm also at the San Francisco Chronicle, where you can read my review of The Blackening, a terrific little horror comedy directed by Tim Story. And I also have a feature up right now about talking to the filmmakers behind Elemental. Brian, what do you have going on?
Writing for Young Jedi Adventures, which is currently available on Disney Plus and airs on Disney Junior.
Perfect. With that, on behalf of my partner, Brian Hall, my name is Zaki Hassan. This has been Movie Film 270. Catch you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome, friends. It's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast. Enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
David's Bridal, where brides and bridesmaids get fabulously dressed. We let our friends pick out what we wear, show off our dance moves, obsess over every little detail. Hold your hand through it all. Smile bravely when it's time to let go. Make your dreams come true. The things we do for love. Only at David's Bridal.
When you wake up well-rested on a great mattress, everything becomes clear.
I do have a favorite child.
Things you missed when you were tired finally reveal themselves.
I use memes as a coping mechanism.
It's Mattress Firm's once-a-year sale and clearance. Get up to 60% off select Sealy, plus a free adjustable base, all with free and fast delivery. Deals this big won't last long, so don't miss out. The right mattress matters. We'll find yours. Restrictions apply. See store or website for details.